Hello, welcome to my cake kitchen. I'm Gladys, and over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate baking and decorating easily. We're back to our ganache ratios, a subject we started yesterday where we covered all things ganache, and 24 hours after can I get my words? 24 hours after our ganache has been made and left to set in different ratios, we are back to checking what they look like in terms of consistency, and we'll be discussing the final parts of the uses, and of course, by which at the end of the tutorial, you will understand what type of ganache will be best for you and what the ratios generally look like. I'm not going to labor the point, but a quick summary of what we discussed yesterday is that if you are a cake maker, beginner or intermediate or even advanced, you require different types of ganache and different consistencies of the mixture to set your results up for you. Whether you want your ganache for a drip, whether you want it for coating a cake but not worried about the sun, whether you want to optimize your ganache for the best results when the heat is up, it is all in the details and the relationship between your cream to chocolate ratio over here. For the purposes of this tutorial, I am generally focusing on white chocolate ganache for covering cakes, which is my medium for my cake decorating and generally for my covering of all my cakes. Unless specifically required by a customer or unless I have to make specific consideration, I will always settle for solid white chocolate ganache simply because it guarantees me stability. The mouthfeel is good, it is easy to derive, it has so many advantages going for it compared to buttercream. So one of my absolute favorite things to use in the cake decorating process remains ganache. We started this subject of ganache covering how to make ganache in the various different ways, and I gave you the roadmap to how I make and use my ganache, from the process of making it to optimizing it, reformulating it, and then definitely using it for covering a cake. This is a class-based subject that I am hoping to cover every aspect, and along the way, if you have various questions that you want answers to surrounding the subject of white chocolate ganache for covering cakes, please leave them in the comment section or in the community post or under the video comments, and I will do well to answer them for you. So where we started was the type of chocolate you want to use. You could use your regular white chocolate or cooking chocolate, both is fine. The difference between both is very specific to the cocoa butter amounts and sugar amounts in each, but that will be a subject to be covered in a different video. We also talked about the different types of chocolates that are used in the making of ganache, which ranges from white chocolate, milk chocolate, and dark chocolate. For the purposes of understanding and just to avoid confusion, we are sticking with the subject of white chocolate ganache only throughout the process of the ganache tutorials. But when we come to milk chocolate and dark chocolate, similar principles apply and some of the processes will remain the same. We also discussed the relationship between the type of cream and the chocolate to use, and we spoke about the amount of cream, fat to cream ratio that is needed in the cream for you to get some great results with your ganache. In the UK, generally double cream or fresh cream or Elmerly is usually recommended for the amount of fat in the cream, which is about 35% or more. Generally, the double cream or fresh cream has a fat content of about 48%. What's wrong with me? I can't speak. Right, let's see. I just wanted to see the code. Oh, bear with me. I cannot see if you're talking to me in the chat, I cannot see you. So I'm just trying to get the chat. Okay. Oh, okay. Siddiqui is in the chat. Hello, Siddiqui. Thank you for being here and thank you for your time. So back on the subject of the cream. In the UK, the recommended cream that is used generally in the making of white chocolate ganache for covering cake remains double cream or fresh cream or sometimes Elmerly. I have covered all of that, how to use all of that in the previous tutorials, which I hope you can check out. And then there's also the subject of what chocolate ganache is best for you and the different purposes, and why there are different ratios of ganache to use. The simple reason is that ganache is a cumulative word for a mixture or supposedly an emulsion between chocolate and cream. You can derive different forms of ganache for different uses depending on the consistency and the objectives of which you are deriving the ganache. So for instance, in yesterday's tutorial, we discussed the 1-to-1 ratio, which is great for drizzling, pouring, making a sauce, or literally draping over a cake in a frosty runny form. That is the 1-to-1 ratio, and that is because the amount of chocolate to cream will derive you a very runny liquid like consistency. So if you want to make your drip cakes, chances are you might be employing a 1-to-1 ratio, or a ratio of which the cream is a little more than the chocolate, which will yield you the runny ratio. Now, if you upgrade a ratio of 2, if you upgrade from the 1-to-1 to 2-to-1, we discussed in yesterday's video that you might get a firmer consistency that would be used for coating or covering your cakes. However, it might not sustain when the weather is against you and things get what's wrong with me today? And things get a bit warm. But there are also other functions for the use of your 2-to-1 ratio, which is that for the 2-to-1 ratio, besides being able to cover a cake, you can use that for soft things like whipping it for piping and for decorations that may be able to hold form. Obviously, the disadvantage is that it may not hold strongly when the sun is against you or in warmer temperatures. So it's not just the sun we are here fighting against. We are also fighting against the warmth in our kitchen and conditions that might arise, causing the ganache to not hold or causing the ganache to fall apart. Then we came to the generally recommended ratio of 3-to-1, which is 3 parts of chocolate to 1 part of cream. So over here we had 300 grams of chocolate to 100 mils of cream, into which we added a bit of salt and some corn syrup. Now, in previous tutorials, if you've seen that, this is the ratio that is highly recommended, which is what I used in deriving my previous videos and showed you all that you needed to do to get the best result in your cake decorating process. I only repeated it here for the purposes of comparison, but the 3-to-1 is generally most recommended because it yields you the most stable, the most solid ganache that is best without other issues that may come with raising the quantity of ganache. So 3-to-1, perfect for decorating or covering your cakes. Whether whipped or unwhipped, it holds form, guarantees stability, can be used under fondant, can be used by itself, colors very well. The advantages of that is quite varied. Of course, it can also be used in making truffles or shaping forms or making shapes that will hold. And as we develop in our tutorial today, you will get to see what the consistency looks like and the results of that. And then we come to 4-to-1 ratio, the least spoken amount of ratio of chocolate to ganache, chocolate to cream that is used in the cake decorating process. And that is because the reason for deriving 4-to-1 ratio of chocolate to cream is simply to firm things up so that you are exceptionally guaranteed of no issues in rising temperatures. It is very solid, but it is not just for its solid nature under warm temperatures and its ability to sustain. It is also used for sculpting, if you want to sculpt items, for molding, and also for creating solid shapes and forms. So that is the 4-to-1. Now, if you are working against the sun and you wanted a 4-to-1, by all means, but the 4-to-1 ratio requires a little bit of technique and skill, which means that as a person who wants to go for 4-to-1, you have to have the knowledge of how to optimize it and use it for your best result. Otherwise, it might come with some associated issues that you may not have planned for, and that we will discuss as this tutorial develops. So that's a general overview of the discussion we had in yesterday's or the previous tutorials. This is just the summary I've just given you is a general overview of our discussions from the previous tutorial. It's in a live format. You can check that out if you want, and much of it will also be clipped for you to catch up the summary of all of that. So after making all the ganache in various ratios, which is 1:1, 2:1, 3:1, and 4:1, left to set for 24 hours, which is simply following the same process I would use in deriving my ganache generally for covering cakes. We are back 24 hours later, and we are just going to observe what the ganache looks like. And I have a small cake here. I am not going to attempt to cover the cake entirely because it's a very small cake. The purposes of this tutorial is just to show you what the ganache consistency looks like after they've been left to set, because that will give us a good view of what we are observing and how they can be optimized for our best result in the cake decorating process. But with the small cake, I'm going to try and spread the ganache to the side and see if we can scrape it a little bit, just so that we can compare the different textures on a cake. I don't know how that is going to yield eventually because I didn't plan for that. The purposes of this tutorial is generally just to show you what it looks like. So with that said, if you're in the chat, here's the part I will make a small and polite request out of you. A very polite request out of you that if you're here with me, thank you. I normally, the lives cover run from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and then we have a long form video on Thursday and Sunday, and in between there is at least a daily shorts version for you to see, covering all the subjects of cake and cake decorating processes, except for the purposes of this tutorial and to round things up. When we were here on the last tutorial, which was yesterday, I promised I was going to make sure I put my garb back on and show up on a Saturday so we can discuss the subject of ganache ratios and finalize the tutorial. So that's why I'm here. And for that, I hope you will consider liking the video, okay? And consider also joining the community. Look, I came to the understanding that chasing the views and being trendy and doing all those things is not going to yield me the result I want, because my passion is actually to teach you cake decorating in a very affordable and yet detailed, informative way that is broken down in very understandable language for you. So consider this channel your go-to place where you learn all things cake decorating, the sort of thing you'll be paying for in class, but it's handed to you. And the only thing I ask for is do consider liking the video, okay, and join the community. The community here is great. Perhaps because we're still small, but no, there are great people here. If you look in the chat, there is Steph. She's seasons over there. I know her as Steph. Okay, and there's Lollipop. There's a few other people that you will get along with in the group. We make a point of creating our own ecosystem, a community that is super supportive of each other, sharing the same values of respect, humanity, and kindness, whilst also learning to make cakes. Because you know what? Beyond the subject of cake decorating is just the happiness we also want to spread. Imagine the time you sat at a table and the dessert of your favorite cake is served. Go back to that in thought and see how excited you feel. As a cake maker who also makes cakes for customers, not a lot these days, but when a customer gets in touch and I have to kind of create a cake for them, that's all exciting for me. And then the day comes when they show up at my door and then they knock on my door and I hand the cake over to them. And I've seen grown men cry about the item or the idea that they want to translate in a language to a loved one or somebody they sincerely care about. So in the heart of cake decorating as a class is also the emotion of joy, kindness, and love that we intend to spread, and that is really personified between the group members over here. And I am incredibly grateful every day when I show up and I find people willing to help, support, and also enjoy what we are doing here. So that is a little bit of why you should consider subscribing. But without boring you, there is Steph in the chat, there is CS Charles. How are you? And Lollipop, good morning. Well, it feels like it's morning in my heart because I'm still feeling very morning-ish, but it's not morning, it's afternoon in the UK. It's 3:21. Okay, now let's go back to the subject of ganache ratios. Now, on the 1-to-1 ratio from the last tutorial, this is what we had. Remember when we made it yesterday, it was very runny. It looked very when it poured, it wasn't very straight. The ribbon kept breaking. But after 24 hours of leaving it to set, this is what we have. Now I'm going to try and stir into it. I'm going to try and stir into it, and it looks set. It looks set, but it's still way soft. And I don't think if I wanted to make a drip or make a sauce out of this, like much of the ganache process, I'll put this back in the microwave for it to come to a runny consistency. But of course, if I'm not using it for any of that and I want to employ it for cake decorating, this will not need reformulating at all. Look, well, it just literally fell back in. We'll try that again. See? So even though it looks firm and set over here, I will ask you a simple question. Do you think this might just hold firm when you use it for cake decorating? Because remember, this was left at room temperature on a countertop for 24 hours, and this is what we have. Would you use this for covering your cake under a form under fondant or by itself on a sunny weather day of up to 28 degrees? I will leave you to answer that question by yourself. But with that in mind, if I wanted to make a sauce, a drip, or a glaze, then the 1-to-1 ratio might just be the option to go for, because as you can see, it is easy to spread. And to make a glaze out of it, all I have to do is pop it back in the microwave. And let's try do that and see. We are going to be following the same time recommendations, and I'm going to try and do this at 5-second intervals just so that we can see what it looks like. Because last time we did it, we brought our 3-to-1 back in under 20 seconds. So let's start at 5-second intervals and see. There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at 5 seconds, this is what we have. It is already melting. Look. So, do you think this will cover your cake? Because whilst this may be good for the other functions we have already identified, the goal here is to derive our best ganache for covering your cake so that they will sustain and keep it stable and also keep form. So clearly we know 1-to-1 is not going to yield us the same result, because after 24 hours, it is still not set firmly enough to guarantee a structured cake. All right, so that's 1-to-1. Now let's talk 2-to-1. Remember, if you're just joining this tutorial, the previous tutorial 24 hours earlier is already up in the live. It's an hours long tutorial where we cover everything you need to understand about ganache. Because I'll tell you this, I have checked on YouTube. I went and I Googled YouTube, because YouTube is a search engine essentially, and said I wanted a video that covers the ratio of ganache, and there is none. Okay, there are snippets of videos about, say, in short format about the ganache ratios, what you need 2-to-1, but there's no detailed tutorial. So consider this your luck that this is available for you to watch, and you get to see it in its raw form about what ganache is, the ratios you need, and how you can use it in your own cake decorating process. Lollipop says absolutely not to using 1-to-1 for covering her cakes. So we're back to 2-to-1. Now, visually we can see the 2-to-1 has set a little better than the 1-to-1. There's a bit of tension here. Now, look. The only reason, look, it's taking a bit of time to fall through, and the only reason it's falling also is because I scooped the entire amount. But let's see. As you can see, it's not falling as fast as the 1-to-1. Now, is that a determinant for how firm it is? Not necessarily, but it also gives you a guide to how set it looks. And at this consistency, we did discuss yesterday, you can use it to cover a cake. until a certain point when temperatures get high, and then it will begin to give away. But in cold weather conditions, like in the English winter seasons, of course, a 2-to-1 ratio will keep, because I've tried that before. It's not my guaranteed amounts to go for sure, but it's still okay for you to use that to cover your cake. But we also know that some of the results of this will yield you great results for piping and for deriving, decorating shapes on your cake that will hold as long as weather conditions don't rise above the melting point of the cocoa butter and the fat. So 2-to-1 over here, not bad, but generally not your recommended amount. Now, let's put that also in the microwave for another 5 seconds and see what the difference in consistency looks like to the 1-to-1 ratio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. We did 5 seconds. And it is spreadable. It hasn't melted and isn't as soft and runny and liquidy as 1-to-1, but yeah, I wouldn't mind this for covering my cakes at all, especially when it's chill. What's Lollipop saying? Because butter stays, I can't, in the winter. Oh, okay. Lollipop is answering a question over there. I can't seem to read it much because there's an emoji covering parts of what you're asking. But yeah, it's because cocoa butter, which is contained in white chocolate, and also the fat in your cream will still keep set in chill temperatures. That's the difference. But above a certain temperature, they will all begin to break, which is what causes your cocoa butter, which is contained in the white chocolate, to melt and fall apart. So after warming that up for 5 seconds, this is what we have, right? And this consistency will be okay to cover a cake. And when you whip it, you can use that for piping and a few other things. Now we're back to the 1 second. We're back to the ratio of 3-to-1. At 3-to-1, I can hardly get the spatula to work in. It is really hard to work through, and this is the consistency you're looking at. It's set, okay? It's not set solid, but it's set. And for us to get it to this peanut butter consistency, we need to put it back in the microwave. If you watch the other tutorials, you will see to get it to a peanut butter consistency, we had about 20 seconds because we need a bit more heat to kind of get it to a spreadable consistency over here. So we're going to do that, but just for a recap, the 3-to-1 ratio is most recommended for covering your cakes if you want to guarantee form and also stability for your cakes. Of course, whilst we talk about the advantages of ganache, it is worth knowing that ganache will do a great job, but up to a certain amount of warmth or heat, it will also begin to break. But the guarantee is much better compared to the use of buttercream. But even so, I must put a disclaimer here and say some buttercream types will sustain, like your Italian meringue buttercream. The difference though is that butter has a specific melting point that is still lower than your cocoa butter and your fat content in your white chocolate. So it's comparing apples and pears, really. Let's move on. I'm going to put this in the microwave. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 seconds, like the 2. Nothing is happening here. Nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing is happening. Nothing. 5 seconds in. Look. Yeah, nothing has happened. Okay, let's do another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have at least 10 seconds. And suddenly it's coming to a spreadable consistency, but it's still firm. It's still firm. Okay, so let's do another 5 and see what we'll get. Okay, that's 15 seconds in total. And now that is the spreadable consistency. So this is the ratio of 3 to 1, which was warmed up for 15 seconds. And this is what we have. Of course, the reason why we want it back at a spreadable consistency is because if you've seen the other tutorials, the goal is to bring it back to a spreadable consistency without breaking the emulsion. And then you can use that to cover your cake if you like. This is also the consistency that you would require for whipping before using onto your cakes. Now, let's talk the business of the team, which is the 4 to 1 ratio. The 4 to 1 ratio is derived specifically for the purpose of making sure the cake will withstand during warm weather conditions, and also to guarantee absolute firmness for your cake. Especially, for instance, when I made a cake top forward, I wanted a 4 to 1 ratio so that the cake doesn't collapse downwards. But that's not the only reason for which you should use ganache. You can also apply structure to your cake to take on the weight, amongst other things. But on the subject of the 4 to 1, ideally it will sustain up until a certain point. Remember, there are always going to be limitations even with your best quality chocolate and cream mixture to guarantee stability even in the warmth, because the elements do eventually give away. However, the 4 to 1, as much as it's derived to compete against the others and also to withstand in warm weather conditions, it's also great for sculpting, for molding, and for creating shapes and forms out of chocolate. So the 4 to 1 is a variation of what you might probably want to create as your modeling chocolate, even though they are not the same. Now, why 4 to 1 is generally not recommended for the cake decorating process is because, as you can see, if I struggled with the 3 to 1, the 4 to 1 is not moving. It isn't. It's set completely solid. It's not. Look. It's like it's become modeling clay. Now, if I put that in the microwave for about 20 seconds, it will come to a spreadable consistency. The issue though is that you have to have some knowledge and skill of the combination to be able to get your best results when using this kind of mixture for your cake decorating process. Because of the mixture itself yielding very tough, like it is, if you're not careful, you'll end up with texture and unrefined or unpolished results on your cake. And that is something to note. But if you want to kind of get it compete to withstand in the heat, there is an entire process to kind of optimize this for your best result. So whilst the 4 to 1 is great for withstanding the heat or rising warmer temperatures, the downside is it requires a bit of skill, and so it is not generally recommended, or at least I don't recommend it for an absolute beginner. You will struggle. So my general recommendation will be a 3 to 1 or an adapted form of 3.5, which is, at this point, we're using 300 grams. You can raise it to 350 grams. You divide that 350 grams by 3, and then the one part of the cream will be one part of what your results are, which at this point, if my maths is not correct, it's a little over 100 mils, maybe 125 mils. Don't quote me on that. I am just making a generalized statement to advise you on what you can do. So you can make that adaptation to your 3-to-1 without actually moving all the way to 4-to-1. And on that note, I'm going to put that in the microwave again. We'll start with 10 seconds. So 10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And here we are. Nothing has happened. It hasn't even moved at all. Like, literally, it's still like, okay. So we are going to do another 10 seconds. And whilst we're at it, 4-to-1 is one of the ratios that will actually yield you problematic results in terms of ganache ratios and how your ganache consistency might create some issues for you and how to fix them, because the relationship between your chocolate to cream and the balance of proportions is important to the consistency you will get. And at 4-to-1, the amounts you need are slightly imbalanced. So when we come to ganache issues and how to fix them, remember this, that one of the key issues in ganache problems is when there is a high amount of chocolate to cream and the ratios are not directly proportional, or there is an imbalance in the elements. So remember that. So if you ask me right now on top of my head, what are some of the ganache problems and how are they caused? Generally, inconsistent temperatures is one of the issues that will cause your ganache to break and the emulsion looking a little bit gritty. But that can be fixed easily by making sure that your ganache making process has like the temperatures right, which is you don't add a completely cold item to one item that is not too warm and all of that. So we have ganache problems such as coming from temperature inconsistencies. You also have too much heat. Okay, too much heat will break the elements or the structure of the chocolate, and the interaction between that breaking down and the cream will cause your ganache to look a little bit grainy and with texture and oily. Okay, one of the key things to observe when your ganache falls apart is there's oil sitting on top and then there is the yellow bits or the fat bits on the bottom. That's not good for you. But too much heat, and too much heat combined with not doing things patiently or not being cautious with the process. Ganache is very, very easy to derive, but it's also sensitive when handling it. Okay, so it will break up very easily. So between temperature inconsistency, too much heat, impatience, and not having an understanding of how to mix your ingredients together, one of the problems is an imbalance in the chocolate to cream ratio. That will break your ganache up, and it will require you to really understand how to bring it all back together. Because remember, this is all also science. I'm no scientist, which is why I don't explain it in the form of a science-based subject. But all of this we're doing here, cream, what is contained in the cream and how it interacts with the chocolate, it's all about the science of emulsion, the combination of fat to liquids and the liquid solid fats and all of that stuff in between. So a 4-to-1 ratio is good for the results that it is derived for, but on the other side it requires knowledge, skill, and slight expertise to be able to get great results when using it for your cake decorating process. That said, let's go and put that back. 10, 9, 8, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's 20 seconds there. Okay, 20 seconds later, it's not spreadable still. And here's what we have. I know you can't see in the bowl, but believe me when I say this is what we have. It's almost like the 3-to-1 when we first kind of try to stir it. There you are. So you know what, 20 seconds in, we haven't got the result we need. I am going to add another 10 seconds and then we will attempt to see if we can use this to cover a cake. Okay, there you go. So that's a little, about 12 seconds in, and here's what we have. It is spreadable, but if you look at it, look, the structure is slightly breaking and it looks grainy. So it is spreadable, but it's not. Look at the textures between the two. This one looks a bit grainy. This one looks really set and fine. And look at that. Just have a look, right? And these ones are okay. Now look at the bowl. It's all broken up, and that's because we have too much chocolate, and trying to get it to a consistency that's spreadable, it's literally broken. At least you can see one of the issues ganache you will have if you try that. So that's 4:1 ratio, and some of the issues that may arise with it. We're going to move these to the side. I'll bring the cake in view, and then we'll try cover some bits of the cake so that you can see visually for yourself. Before that though, this morning when I woke up, I thought I will form some shapes out of the ganache. This is the 4:1 ratio. Look at how firm it is. This is the 3:1 ratio. This is the 2:1. Okay, and the 1:1 barely did nothing. It literally it couldn't form a shape. So that's essentially ganache ratios in summary for you. This is the 1:1. It couldn't do anything. 2:1 barely held it together. 3:1 is finely shaped nicely, and 4:1 is a little bit hard over here. So at least you get to see visually what the ganache ratios look like. Lollipop is asking, how do you fix broken ganache? Not a problem, Lollipop. That's a subject we'll be covering in a different tutorial, because fixing ganache is not very straightforward. So if I said there are different ways you can fix different things, and sometimes the fixing just requires leaving the ganache alone, okay? If it starts breaking, don't stir it, just leave it to the side, which is why I encourage making your ganache 24 hours early, because if you have problems, you can fix it along the way. You see what I'm saying? But if you don't, and your ganache breaks on you and your cake is 2 hours to go, my darling, that will be a mess. Okay. There you go. Right. Okay. The ganache is all clear. Now our cake is back in shot. We are not going to be employing the exact cake decorating process, because the covering of a cake in the various ways has been covered widely on the channel already. So if you want to see cake decorating tutorials using ganache, go on the channel. There's so much videos on there, but even better, the last couple of tutorials showed you how to use ganache in covering a cake. I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. So we are going to start with the 1:1, where I am just going to spread a little bit. Oh, see, it has fallen to the side, and there you have it. Look at what it looks like on the cake. Look what it looks like. Now, if we tried scraping it, okay, look. I will let you decide what that looks like for you. Okay, now let's try a 2:1 on another side of the cake. Okay, that's 2:1. Okay, it hasn't fallen. Remember, if you were crumb coating a cake, these are what the steps you would take. So that's a 2:1 over there. I'm just going to scrape it away. Okay. right? Just for context, here's the 1:1. Here is the 2:1. But mind you, I had to scrape a bit off, more than I would normally. Now, let's do a 3:1. Here's the 3:1. I'm just going to try and cover a small portion. Okay. Now, this is really not, this doesn't really cover the exact result you will get. It is just for demonstration purposes. Okay. If we're being honest, here's 2:1, here's 1:1, 2:1, and 3:1. There's no real difference here in terms of appearance between the 2 and 3:1. Okay, which is why we have said that the 3:1, the 2:1 is fairly okay for covering cakes. So at least you can see from the demonstration, it really is true and it covers that information correctly. The only difference is that when the sun goes up or under warmer temperatures, it will begin to look as pale and very thin as you have with the 1:1 ratio. And that is so important to know, okay? Now, let's look at 4:1, which is even broken over here. The 4:1 is already broken. But let's see what it looks like when you attempt to use broken ganache on your cake. Look at the texture. Look at the texture. Okay, look at the texture. 4:1. Okay, so let's start here. 1:1. Let me get a pointer or something that will show us. That's a 1:1, which is very thin over here. I'm just making this here. And then this is 2:1, which is what you see here. This is 3:1. There's really no visual difference between the 2 and the 3. And then, of course, this is 4. Can you see? Aha. Tell me your thoughts in the chat. Let's go around again. I have just labeled them. We have 1:1 over here. 1:1, 2:1, 3:1. This is it. And then 4:1. Have a look. Tell me what you think. I can see in the comment, Lollipop saying the 4:1 looks rather sandy. Of course it does, because it's broken. And you see, like I said, I could go through the trouble of covering a whole cake with all of this. I will be belaboring the point, because the truth is we've discussed this in detail about the ganache options and the ratios and how they yield. I just wanted to give you something visual that actually drives home the point, and that is the purpose of this tutorial for you here. So I hope you can see what I mean. The 3:1 will cover your cake nicely, and the 4:1 will break. But of course, I'm trying to get the live chat and I can't. Okay, where is the chat? Okay. Yep, Lollipop is completely right. Lollipop says number 2, which is the 2:1 is fine if weather permits and you're not stacking. 3 and 4 is for steadiness. Lollipop, if there's one person who I think got this, the value of this class, it would be you. So thank you. Right? If you're in the chat, tell us what you think. Now, here's a question. What ratio would you choose for yourself, even after this demonstration? Okay, so Steph says she would go for 4 as long as it's unbroken. Steph, why is that? Is it because you are in a sunnier place and you would rather go for 4? Or there's a different reason for that? Because I thought it was clear in the discussion already that 4 might just not be the option if you can get things down to 3. But if you went for 4 unbroken, okay, Lollipop says 3. 3, and that's on a room temperature cake to stop it from setting before you've smoothed it. Okay, yeah. You know what? I think the small part, the missing part that I didn't reiterate is that using ganache in any form still requires some sort of intermediate level. It's not completely beginner friendly. I think any form of cake decorating is not for an absolute beginner, if you like, because there are so many things, which is why for cake making I will encourage you to kind of understand your baking processes, because if you just enjoy the subject of cakes and you want to bake cakes, there are many ways you can present a beautiful table of cakes without having to do any of this. But for decoration, if you want to start, you have to have some sort of knowledge about how to use certain products for the result you are yearning for. So Trina was asking, what ingredients am I using? Well, what you see on the table is a cake, but we're not covering the subject of cake. We're covering the subject of what is around the cake, which is ganache. And we were covering ganache on the ratios that are used and the consistencies that they derive for the cake decorating process. So if you're a cake maker and you want to cover a cake but you don't want to use buttercream but you want to choose ganache, what will be the right consistency of ganache that will yield stability and support, like firmness on your cake? That is exactly what we are covering today, and that's what we have done here. Trina says, I love ganache. Thank you for saying that. Come to think about it, having covered it slightly because the cake was cold to touch, look at the 4-to-1. It feels firm, even though it has texture on it. It's still firm. The 3-to-1 is set too. The 2-to-1 fairly set. Remember, the 2-to-1 and 3-to-1 have similarities, except when the sun is up and temperature is a little high, then there's a problem. And the 1-to-1 is sticky. Look. So I think okay, so Lollipop is saying the reason why I use 3 is because I could pick it up if I had to. Oh, Frankie is asking, Sister Gladys, to your 10 minutes. I think I can read that. That is Ga. Because I remember, Frankie, you were here yesterday, right? Am I correct? Let me try and see. I don't speak Ga. I understand it, but I'm not fluent. But for Toyo Teng Mene, I can say Ofa Neminyo Jogba. For those of you who don't understand what's happening, I'm Ghanaian, okay? So he's addressing me in a Ghanaian language and I'm responding. That's all, okay? So I told you, Frankie made me said, met me actually buy any shit on it, what have you. Like, don't let this and the English fool you, okay? All right? Lavette from Florida. And Trina Lowe, where are you joining us from today? And Lavette from Florida, how is the I don't think I can read that, Frank. Frank, why are you speaking Ga to me? I never told you yesterday I can speak Ga. Why are you writing Ga? I can't read that. As in, I don't even know what. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. You know what? I read Ga in school as part of languages. So I think I can understand what you were asking, but no. Lollipop is asking, was that goodbye? No. Oh, okay. So he's asking, all right. Frankie, stop distracting us, okay? Lollipop, no. Toyote is how are you in Ghana language. Remember yesterday when we were covering the subject of different languages in Ghana? So the people of Accra, which is the capital city of Ghana, the natives speak a language that is called Ga, spelled as G-A, Ga. So that was the language he was typing, asking me, how am I? And my response to say, oh fine, let me yoga is like, I am very well, thank you, sort of. So yeah. And then he was asking, he was asking me something else I couldn't really understand, because it's not a language I can read it, because in Ghanaian phonetics you can put stuff together and make sense out of it if you can understand. And I read Ga as a language in school, but I never was able to grasp it or speak it. I don't know why. Oh, Levette, 75-degree today. Oh my goodness. So are you sat in your porch, or are you pottering about? What are you doing, Levette? We are nosy. We want to see what you are up to. Seasons. Okay. Seasons. When I was asking what ganache, the fourth one that you would go for, you said ganache for modeling, fondant. Okay. I'd pay you make a delicious. Oh, I'll just pay you to make me a delicious cake. You know what? Don't you worry. I always say, at the moment, remember earlier in July, we discussed the online shop. Can I be honest with you? I have been a bit slow in doing all those things because I want us to still maintain the perspective of value in a way that is still wholesome for us. Setting up the online shop and driving myself over there, it requires a lot of logistics, understanding what postage will look like, how to ship the products and all of it. Those will come in the future. But even in July, in a panic and excitement, when I looked into it and the research, I thought, let me just pump the brakes a little bit. But I also feel a little bit like I have a little bit of about the American postage system, because if I had an online shop, for the immediate time, it will be limited to the UK-based audience until we can figure out how we can send stuff to you guys over there. And I kind of feel like that's a big miss out for you, because actually more than 50% of my watching audience is American, which is lovely. So Levette. Oh, okay. Levette is a CNA nurse, and I help my aunt do catering jobs. Today you're catering a banquet. You cook. Levette, if you're cooking Southern food, I want some cornbread. I want me some cornbread, some nice I'm not fond of collard greens, so I'm not even going to pretend. Oh, look, the American people are enjoying the sunshine. It's Levette in Florida. Levette. I know Florida is a big place, but these days I feel a certain way about the name Florida because of the Edelsons. You must have heard, if you're in Florida, you must have. Them family members that killed the professor, the Edelsons and Dan Markel, they've suddenly made Florida and Miami just feel like, oh, can people just enjoy the sunshine and the alligators and not do odd things. Okay. So Levert, you know about the Adolescents. Oh, that story had me obsessed. Okay, you wouldn't think a man died because the whole thing is fascinating. Like, how do rich people wake up and think the best place we want to go is prison? Like Donna, what is her name? Donna Edelson. She is just a drama, isn't she? That's just by the way. Trina is enjoying her 45-degree sunshine today. I don't know what the Lollipop, can you tell them what our weather temperatures are like in the UK today? Okay, just tell them. Lollipop, we are counting on you, dear Lolly. It's not that sunny here, and as a cake maker, I am happy. Okay, I don't have problems with the sun. Look, I don't want the rain. Okay, I do not want the rain and the drama. Apparently, it's that you have seen it. Ha! Lavette, have you seen Donna in prison, or Donna in court, or Donna at her luxury apartment? Which one? Okay. I'm sure anyone in Florida will know about the story of the Adolescents. That story is just wild. And the thing that continues to be wild, if you look, it seems like I'm just talking to oh, okay. Frankie is asking Ghana if Fabena will free. Ghana yakakra, Frankie. I could come from anywhere, okay? But I did say yesterday that I'm a northerner from Ghana, the northern part of Ghana. I grew up in the southern part of Ghana, and I moved around different places, and I'm here. I've been in the UK nearly 2 decades now. So if you ask me where I come from in Ghana, I might have to think about it because it depends on who is asking. Okay, Frankie. Ooh, okay. Lavette, you met Donna at her apartment. Lavette, you and I might have to go for a drink, and then you can spill all the tea about Donna, because she doesn't strike me as a nice person. By the way, if you guys don't know what we are on about, there is a story in the news. It's not current, but it's a developing story where if how do I even summarize this story? Okay, so there is Dan and Wendy. Dan and Wendy got married. Wendy doesn't want the marriage and left. Wendy's family, which are the Adolescents, weren't really happy because of the outcome of the marriage and also some custody issues. But the small detail underneath all of that is Dan accusing Wendy of some fraudulent activity, which, if charged or comes to light and can be defended with evidence, may cause Wendy, who is a practicing attorney, to lose her license. In all of these custody issues and the turmoil between both people, which is Dan and the Adolescents, Wendy's brother decides to hire some kill people to unalive Dan. And they did that at least successfully for a minute. And 9 years later, all their co-conspirators, including Wendy's mom, Wendy's brother, and the people who did the job, and the intermediary who sorted the deal, 5 people are all in prison now. Now, what is fascinating about the story, which keeps it as a developing subject, is that Wendy, who is now labeled a key conspirator in all of this, and for whom the unaliving was done to her benefit, walks free. So we'll see what happens. But that story is just fascinating because Wendy comes from a very privileged background, and her parents and her brother were all, to a very large extent, successful people who you will expect would have discernment and wisdom to understand. Sometimes, you know what? You can't just have everything you want, okay? So some things are just better left alone. And most importantly, it's not worth taking the risk of a murder of somebody just to get what you want. But apparently, they thought they knew better, and they did that. And now their luxury lifestyle is gone. Mom is in prison, brother is in prison, Wendy's walking free. The co-conspirators are all in prison now. So we'll wait and see how Florida decides to treat Wendy, whether they will get Wendy to, whether they will charge Wendy or not. We don't know, but it's a really fascinating story. But it also brings to light the Bible quote that says, where you will where selfish desires reign, there you will find a range and all sorts of sin. Okay, the Idolsons just seem like self-centered, extremely selfish people who just wanted what they wanted and couldn't give a damn about how they achieved their goal. And so that intention drove them to murderous actions, and now they are in prison. That's all. Let's not ruin the vibe, okay? Let's settle on the subject of cake. So for those of you who are enjoying the sunshine, well, send some sunshine our way, okay? Send some sunshine our way. But on the subject, one second. If you're in doubt about why we are here, or if you're joining us a little later, we were discussing the subject of ganache ratios, a subject we covered largely yesterday, talking you through the differences, the relationship between the chocolate to cream, why one may be better for other functions than another one for different other functions, all of that. Today was just a follow-up because we derived the ganache from yesterday. We left it to set. We came back today to observe the results of leaving all the forms of ganache to set. And then we tried using it to cover cakes, a cake here, and then we can see how they yield around our cakes. So on that note, we do recognize that the 1-to-1 ratio, which yields you a very liquidy, runny consistency of ganache, may be good for drips on your cake, a sauce, frosting, as in a glaze type of frosting on your cake, and for actually nothing for wanting to maintain firmness or hold on your cake. Then we know that the 2-to-1, as much as it's good for covering, it's also good for piping details, creating forms, but all this will hold up until a certain point before it begins to give away. The most recommended ratio here is the 3-to-1. That evidently holds form on the cake, can guarantee stability, but it's also limited to certain weather conditions. That is, the rising conditions may cause it to break, but it will sustain better than some forms of buttercream or the 2-to-1 ratio. And of course, the 4-to-1 ratio, which is the bee's knees of the ratios, is what you have here. It will guarantee stability and structure on your cake for modeling, carving, and a few other functions, but it's not great for covering cakes if you do not have the skill or expertise. And on that note, we decided to use all of that around the cake, and we saw that the 1-to-1 was sticky. The 2 was very sticky and thin. As a result, the 2-to-1 was a little bit set and firm on the cake compared to the 3-to-1, which also appeared the same. The difference being when the sun comes up, then you will have problems. The 4-to-1 is a little bit grainy with texture, and that is because the ganache broke and we weren't able to set it up properly for use. In other video tutorials, we will be able to cover ganache problems, how to fix it, how to yield your very best result for ganache. At the moment, it is very clear that the most recommended for making ganache for covering your cakes is the 3-to-1 ratio. I have already gone ahead and covered that in previous tutorials. So if you're in the chat and you want to learn more about ganache, go check those videos out. I show you how to make it in 2 ways using Elmley, which is a cream substitute, and fresh cream, both of which I combine to make the ganache on a ratio of 3-to-1 with a pinch of salt and some quantity of corn syrup. And then I also made it with just double cream, which was the pasteurized double cream, not the ultra processed long life cream. No, pasteurized, just warmly heated to extend a shelf life. It is still kept refrigerated in the cold section when you go shopping. It functions like fresh cream, except it has been pasteurized for use, which means that the same sensitivities that you are related to fresh cream does not apply to your pasteurized cream. So I make a version of chocolate ganache using that, and also Aldi own brand sort of chocolate, because one of the key questions that remains consistent in the theme of ganache and the tutorials that evolve around it are what chocolates are the best. You know what? Chocolates and its chocolates and its combined ingredients is a matter of science. Okay, what cocoa solids you have and everything else, it's very technical, and I have to find a way to break all of that down for you. But on the subject of white chocolate and the ingredients, we've already established the base ingredients in white chocolate does not include cocoa solids. However, the quality of cocoa butter which is contained in white chocolate will determine what quality of white chocolate you are sourcing on the market. I cannot recommend a specific brand, because you know what, I move in terms of convenience, suitability, and what works for me. In the past, I have purchased Caliber, and Caliber remains a preferred brand for certain types of cake I want to make. For instance, if I had a couple that were paying me $1,600 for a 4-tier cake that required expert skill, then yes, I will employ Caliber, because it is very expensive. In terms of taste and yield, it is no different from my little brand, but it's just for the guarantee of perceived quality. If you like, I will purchase Caliber. Would I recommend it to a complete beginner? No, because it doesn't guarantee quality. It doesn't. At least from my experience, it hasn't guaranteed any quality. The best result, it comes from your own expertise, knowledge, and the recipe. So in terms of the different types of chocolates, it's neither here nor there. However, if you decide to go for your own brand or shop your supermarket labeled brand, ranging from your Aldi, Sainsbury's, or any of that in between, you want to look at the ingredients combination. The difference is that the lower the price, there's almost the suggestion that brands will swap for the cheapest ingredients, even if it yields them their results. Okay, so if you're picking up a white chocolate from Tesco's or your local shops, you want to look at the labeling, because sometimes, because the quality of cocoa butter and the amounts contained in the white chocolate may drive the price higher, and yet your local shop is trying to keep a particular price point, they might find substitute ingredients that work for the same products. So sometimes, I think in Aldi, there was a time where the Aldi white chocolate had peanut butter oil in the ingredient. So the cocoa butter was a certain percentage listed, and then there was peanut butter oil, a certain percentage. And for that, you need to check, because it does affect mouthfeel. Does it affect quality in terms of outcome? Not necessarily, depending on what you're looking at. But the proportions of sugar to milk solids and a few additional ingredients might just be the difference between the quality in terms of yield and mouthfeel. Does that make sense? We have covered all of that in different videos in the past, so do check those videos out. Trina is saying, I didn't even know about there's a thing here that is covering what I am reading. There's an emoji here that covers what okay, I can see what. Okay. Oh, Trina was saying, I didn't even know that. That's crazy. Oh, didn't you? maybe we are talking about a different Donna, because if it's the Donna we all talking about, she's in the news. How would you not know that, Trina? Oh, so definitely we're talking about a different Donna, because Levette says she has a subscriber that wants money back. Well, clearly we were both talking about completely different Donna, because the Donna we're talking about, the Donna Edelson I'm talking about is in prison. She doesn't have a channel to have a subscriber on it. So clearly there's some sort of misunderstanding between what we're talking about. So just to clarify, I'm talking about the Edelson family somewhere in Florida. Is it Tallahassee? Weird. That's just by the way. So that's the subject of ganache all covered now for us. Perhaps on our next tutorial we should be covering how to color ganache and perhaps how to fix ganache issues. We'll see. I'll keep you updated on which one comes first, how to fix ganache issues, before we go to coloring, because the issue is that when you color your ganache you are adding additional ingredients to it, so you should have an understanding on how to fix your ganache before you go to color it, just in case you encounter some very different problems. Whew. It's Saturday. Anyway, that's the subject of ganache done. Let's have a look at the ganache again. The 4-to-1 that is set. Look, the 4-to-1 has set, but look at it. It's looking broken again. The 2-to-1 looks creamy and set over here. And then the 3-to-1 still is firm. And 1-to-1 is still like sloppy. It is sloppy. There you go. There you go. Let's see. Anyway, what are you all doing today? It's Saturday. For some of you, it's still early morning. I'm washing my hands. For some of you, it's still early morning. What's your Adiola? Trina says, oh, you didn't know the story of the Edelsons. Oh, God. Look, I think after this live, just on YouTube here, there are so many people who have covered this story. It's wild. So after this live, maybe check on YouTube and you will get your daily dose of the Edelsons and their drama. It's wild. And, oh, you need to shop. Lollipop. Welcome. I think that's something I have in common with you. I think after the live, I have a bit of stuff to organize, and then hopefully the boys will be back. They're out at the moment, so that I can go and do some shopping, like, yeah, some cake shopping and some bits and bobs. So hopefully I can go and complete the shopping. Adiola, how are you, darling? Thank you for being here, my people. For those of you who are enjoying your 75-degree foreign art and the 41 degrees. Oh, okay. Oh, Adiola is watching from Nigeria. Hi. Wow. You know what? Thank you for stopping by. When I see my Nigerian counterparts making cakes, I sit in awe thinking about you people are just God's soldiers, okay? Because making cakes in the heat is not for the faint-hearted, Adiola, okay? And then having to travel to deliver it. And yet I see all these humongous cakes that have been skillfully designed. I just sit in awe of all of you. So you know what? Hats off to you. And thank you for stopping by. Trina says, I like the show. Thank you. And you've subscribed. Thank you. You know what? We are grateful to have you. Okay? And by the way, people, thank you all very much. We literally just crossed 9,500 people. Now, people, do you know what 9,500 looks like? Do you? That's a whole stadium. and some. Okay, that's a whole stadium and some. But you know what? Whether it's virtual, I know for every number is an individual who's made a choice to be here. And even though you are not always here at the same time, I am still grateful to have you nonetheless. We literally just crossed 9.5. We are headed to the 10K mark. Let's push it, okay? Let's get there. Let's cross all the milestones. Because you know what? Long before I made cakes, okay? Long before I made cakes, I couldn't afford the classes. I really couldn't, okay? And the place that taught me was YouTube. And I started, if I told, maybe one day I'll come and sit here and I'll tell you the story. I will pick some of my old cakes and I'll tell you some of the stories surrounding it. At the time, I didn't have the sense of mind to record some of the moments. And quite frankly, if I had recorded it, I don't know if I would have kept it because I didn't know my future would land me on YouTube, okay? But, my very first cake was a disaster. I remember I literally picked up my whole center table. The center table had a glass on it. It's called a coffee table, right? It had a glass that could be moved and the bottom can be moved. And I literally picked the glass, cleaned it up and put it on my kitchen top. I lived in a very small flat that was hot in the summer seasons. Oh, Jesus, I needed someone all those years ago on a live showing me exactly how to make cake, how to start and how to finish. And I didn't. There were all these tutorials about how to make cakes, how to do this. What I'm telling you here is there were some key moments that were missed in those videos, okay? Now, your creator out here is not lying to you when they make the cake videos, believe me. But there is something called editing that shrinks the context and the process. Because you know what? It takes me maybe up to about an hour to cleanly get a cake polished. If I made a video covering that entire hour of quietness and putting my scraper in warm water, you will not watch. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm not mad if you don't watch, okay? It's fine. I'm not mad, okay? But it means that the context is taken away. The context is gone and there is a part you will never get to see. Because do you know what it looks like taking a whole hour to look like 20 seconds? There's no way, you know? And I sat there and I watched all those videos and I went to make my first cake and boy, oh boy. You need to get me my favorite drink on a night out and I better tell you all the sins I committed on that cake. And so fast forward nearly, 8-9 years later, when I decided I wanted to make YouTube videos, the core that drove me to making videos was to actually bring you everything. And now, thinking about the fact that I couldn't create the entire video in hours and hours formats in long form, somehow something clicked and I thought, let me start a live. And so the intention of the live tutorials is to bring you the raw versions of the cake decorating process. And if you've been here long enough with us, you will know that when I started the lives, they started a little bit messy and sketchy, okay? And then we grew. Like most things, you do it consistently, you gain competence and you get experience and then you refine. So I have grown through the entire process. And even through that growth, I used to go back and edit my live videos to kind of get rid of the quiet moment. And then eventually I realized that it also, when you edit in the YouTube studio, it takes away the live chat. It kind of edits the live chat. So I realized that no, that's pointless because I need you to see the interactions in the live chat when you come back to watch it on replay. So the lives actually are completely unedited. I don't have a script. If you've been here long enough, you will know we don't work. I literally come and tell you what I think or cover the subject because it's what I do. Where necessary, I come with notes, but we don't do that because I will talk about cakes in my dream, okay? I say all of that to say it is a passion of mine to be able to teach you cakes in a way that makes up for your need to take a class, especially when you cannot afford it. So if you're a complete beginner, even an advanced baker or somebody who just wants to learn, we are not gatekeeping. I will tell you everything. Look, These are the ganache I showed you on here that I've created into a tutorial. It's the exact ganache I use for making customer cakes. I am literally handing you the heart of my business. But you know what? There's still enough to go around. So stick around. That's all. That's all. Okay. So thank you for being here. Adiola said, I love the way you talk. Thank you, Adiola. It's great to have you. Sarah, Sarah's Kitchen. Sarah, hi. Sarah, you're here to make friends, okay? And half of the time, your friends are in the chat with you. That's just by the way. Seasons. Okay, I mean, you see, Seasons is keeping you happy over there. Seasons is stuff. Seasons has a channel too, and she does homestead stuff. So you know what, we support each other, so check her out. Lollipop is our resident person. And over time you will meet her other sister in America. She's Tabitha. Tabitha is not here today, okay? And all of you, thank you for stopping by today. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure. We've covered ganache. If you want to know more, go check the other tutorials. But it's Saturday, it's 4:30. I better go and continue my Saturday because I've got stuff to do. I'll see you all on the next one. Mwah.